He's going to get better and better. He's just scratching the surface of how good he's going to be.
I think Bill Russell, obviously, for what he does on the defensive end.
When you look at the skill set, the IQ, the work ethic, and then most importantly, the upside in terms of how he affects the game on both ends of the floor, this is an MVP in waiting.
Davis knocks it down. He's got 31 points. Screen knocked loose by Davis. Davis to the other end. Davis lays it in, and he's got 50. Also a career-high 7 steals, and it's 102-100.
He's back. Last night, Anthony Davis had a monster game, putting up 50 points, 16 rebounds, 5 assists, 4 blocks, 7 steals in his first regular season game since March. Davis missed the end of last season with a knee injury, but appears back to his true form. Davis becomes part of an elite club as he's now the 4th player in NBA history with 50 points in a season opener, joining Michael Jordan, who did it twice, Wilt Chamberlain, and Elgin Baylor, all of whom are Hall of Famers. Max, the question is, where does Davis rank among the NBA elites? Tell me what you got.
I love this off the Brady segment because this applies to Anthony Davis. On a per-game basis, I believe this is the year that Anthony Davis establishes himself as the second best player in the game to LeBron James on a per-game basis. But so far, he's always playing between 60 and 70 games a year. I mean, he's really, when you have other very talented players in the league, like a quarterback that we just argued, you can't give them 15 or 20% more games to play and then make an MVP case in Anthony Davis's case. But on a per-game basis, this guy can defend the pick and roll both players simultaneously. He's that long. He can pass the ball because, has been famously pointed out, he was a point guard and then suddenly grew a foot, went from 6 to basically 7 feet in like a year. And so he retained his point guard skills, but now he can play the 4 or the 5. He offensively just gave you 50. But even in terms of his efficiency, Stephen A. Smith in 2 seasons ago, not last season, the season before last, Anthony Davis led the league in PER. Say whatever you want about PER, Hollinger's stat. PER is imperfect, but it is a much better shorthand for finding out how good a player is, at least offensively, than just saying points, rebounds, assists. It's better shorthand because it tells you how efficient they are while they're accumulating those numbers. And Anthony Davis was the best in the NBA during the regular season at that. And in fact, his Pelicans made the playoffs without that much around him by bumping off a Spurs team that really needed the win that night for playoff
Last
position.
game of the regular season.
Last game of the regular season. They were highly motivated. And Anthony Davis, as a one-man band, did it by himself. And then to have a performance like he had last night, among the great opening day performances of all time. Per game this year, he will establish himself as second to LeBron James in the NBA.
Well, again, he has to stay healthy. We understand that. I'm going to say the jury is still out about that because I think Kevin Durant is a freak of nature, and I think he's one of the top 3 players in the world. Steph Curry's got to have the kind of year that he had. It's a guard-oriented league. If I had to pick between one or the other, you know, obviously you're going to think about the guard. See, where Steph Curry comes into play, here's where it's deceptive, y'all. I look at a guy like Steph Curry, for example, and I'm talking about throwaway game 1. I'm talking about last year based off of last year's performance. The way the NBA game is played and it being a guard-oriented game, I've never seen a shooter like Steph Curry in my life. I think he is the greatest shooter I've ever seen. And if you tell me that somebody can shoot the basketball like that, I don't care what LeBron and Anthony Davis and Kevin Durant and all of them can do. When you can shoot the ball like that, and you have the ball in your hands because you're shooting it from the point guard spot as opposed to the off guard spot. Because remember, even the off guard still needs to get the ball from somebody else. The point guard is the one that has the ball in his hands. He's the one running the show, which means he can shoot whenever he wants to, even though he's supposed to be prioritizing running the show. I can't sleep on Steph Curry, but I will tell you this. When I think about elite players, away from the guard play, the system itself, the way the game is played, just guys on their overall abilities, I can't disagree with being behind LeBron James. I can make an argument that Kevin Durant, unleashed, could be that lethal. But Anthony Davis, I've said this, Max, a few years ago, about last year sometime. I said Anthony Davis in 3 years, if healthy, will be the best player in the world. He is that big time because Kevin Durant's not him defensively. Now, offensively, I think Kevin Durant could be whatever he wants to be. But defensively, he's not this kid. This kid actually defends centers. He defends power forwards. He can rebound. He can block shots. And more importantly, he's focused on doing that. So clearly, he's elite in that regard. My concern about Anthony Davis, however, is who's he playing with. Did you see last night's game? I mean, Max, I don't know how to put this into words. I cover the NBA. Tim Frazier, who the hell is that? Who? He got Etwan Moore, Solomon Hill, Lance Stevenson. I mean, we know those names. Terrence Jones is there now. I mean, who the hell put together this roster? I mean, I mean, Demps and these boys in New Orleans, they got to get it together. Because when you got a player like Anthony Davis,
he's a generational talent.
You got to give him more help.
I mean, like, how do you even describe Anthony Davis? He's got Kevin Garnett ability defensively. Garnett was a more intense defender at the same point in his career, I think. But Anthony Davis has that kind of length and ability, and offensively has things that no one else can really do given his size. He's an amazing player. You know, Rick Fox put me up on something, though, when I was doing L.A. radio, talking about the Lakers needed a big man. They maybe when Okafor and other guys were available.
Yep.
The Lakers never draft big men, really. Not the ones who turn out to be great. Not about buying them. I mean, Kareem, Wilt, those guys. Shaq. Because big men, and I know Anthony Davis isn't a classical big man in the sense he's not going to bang down low, but he is a giant. He's 7 feet tall. Because you don't know how their bodies are going to react to an NBA schedule and to the punishment, etc. You need to see through attrition who's left standing before you choose that guy. And Anthony Davis, the only thing, I think we agree about this, that can stop him is injury. For that reason, when you say who's going to be the best player in 2 or 3 years, who's going to eventually take over for LeBron, I like Karl Anthony Towns. Not only did he come into the league shooting the three better than Anthony Davis, but given his injury history so far, knock wood, you hope everyone stays healthy, I think he's the safer bet. Anthony Davis has yet to show that he can really stay healthy all season. Now, it is a point guard league when you talk about where he ranks in the constellation of NBA stars, and you bring up Steph Curry and the kind of shooter he is. It's not just that Steph Curry can hit shots, hit the three. It's that he can hit from way behind the arc. So not all spacing is created equal. When he hits from 30 feet, the defense has more to cover, and now guys like Draymond are 40% shooters just about. Not normally, but with Steph on the team, because they have so much time to shoot the ball. I understand the value there, but there are other guys like Damian Lillard and others who can approximate what Steph can do. Apologies to everyone, including Karl Anthony Towns. But what Anthony Davis can do, no one can really approximate.
Which is why I wouldn't take Karl Anthony Towns ahead of him. And I love Karl Anthony Towns. And I certainly was wrong about Jahlil Okafor in comparison to him. I think that Jahlil Okafor is going to prove to be far better than people realize. He's playing with the Sixers last year. And we all know what a pathetic situation that is.
Embiid looked pretty good last night.
Which is something we will get into a little bit later. But Karl Anthony Towns is big time. But Anthony Davis is special. He is a guy, he is a big man who can play like a guard, and he can be formidable at both positions. He could be formidable in the backcourt, he could be formidable in the front court. It does not matter. He's a matchup nightmare, and he has significant prowess defensively. But you might be a bit sullied by who you're playing around. This is the same Anthony Davis that averaged 31.5 and 11 rebounds in a 4-game sweep to the Golden State Warriors a couple of years ago. 31.5 and 11 rebounds on better than 50% shooting when everybody and their grandmama knows you are the only option that they have on offense.
It is a crime what the Pelicans have put around him. That squad
no
is a joke, and they're. By the way, here's the last thing about Anthony Davis. He's 23
I want to say this last
years
point.
old.
I want to say this. I want to say this last one. Demps and the crew, let me say this. I ain't wishing nothing on anybody. Got nothing but love for them. I hope they get it together. But if things continue to go this way, something's going to have to be done, because you can't have this kind of talent around a talent like Anthony Davis. And in case anybody out there is looking for an executive, may I throw out a name before we go to break? How about Joe Dumars, a guy that guided the Detroit Pistons to like 6th or 2nd consecutive conference finals appearances, 2 consecutive NBA finals, won an NBA championship, arguably could have won a second if Rasheed Wallace had remembered to guard Robert Horry in the corner instead of leaving him open. The bottom line is Joe Dumars has been out of this game. I'm seeing a lot of these analytics, dude, your favorite people, and others getting opportunities. I am sorry. They don't deserve it ahead of Joe Dumars. Joe Dumars needs to be an executive in this league, and if New Orleans doesn't get their act together soon, somebody needs to call one of their homegrown products, which is Joe Dumars.
We'll leave it there. Let's stay in the NBA. Trust the process. You don't want to miss how Stephen A. feels about the 76ers' plan to get out of the NBA's basement. That conversation is next.
Welcome back to First Take, presented by Bass Pro Shops.
Don't miss tomorrow's First Take when actor Omar Epps will be in the house. He's a big Cowboy fan, so don't miss the fireworks when he goes head-to-head with Stephen A. That's tomorrow right here on First Take.
And they're chanting, trust the process, in a nod to Sam Hinkie, who was the general manager here.
So it was an exciting opening game for 76ers fans last night. Despite losing to the Thunder, fans fired up to see the number 3 overall pick from the 2014 draft, Joel Embiid, finally making his NBA debut. The crowd chanting, trust the process, something Sixers former general manager Sam Hinkie had been begging fans to do while the team went through a rebuild. Stephen A., your reaction to fans chanting, trust the process?
I was incredibly annoyed. For those out there that may need to be reminded of, long before, I'm here on First Take and, an NBA analyst for ESPN and hosting my own radio show on Mad Dog Sports Radio and all of that.
You're going to be doing a fight? You're calling a fight?
I'll be calling a fight November 5th, calling the Manny Pacquiao fight, my first ever color commentary on a boxing match. I was a journalist for the Philadelphia Inquirer. Prior to that, the New York Daily News. I've been I was in print journalism for 19 years. I was at the Philadelphia Inquirer for nearly 17 years. I covered every day of Allen Iverson's first 10 years in the NBA, every single game, every day. I know this city. It's a phenomenal city. And listening to those chants last night, as much of a great sports town that I just said Philadelphia is, and has been, this annoyed me beyond measure. Because what this organization, specifically Sam Hinkie, did to this city is an atrocity. And I don't care what anybody says. The fact that this man gets to hide and not be front and center, to get interviewed, to have to answer for the things that he did, to me is criminal. Now, I will openly confess something that I've never confessed on national television. I believe that I had, at least in a small way, something to do with the arrival of Jerry Colangelo and ultimately his son, Brian Colangelo, being in Philadelphia. And I'm going to tell you why. Because very few people were harder on the Sixers organization than me. I spoke to the commissioner about it. I spoke to league officials about it. I spoke to members of the Sixers organization about it. They know who the hell they are because they're very influential within the organization. What was being done to the city of Philadelphia was one of the biggest atrocities we have ever seen in sports. Now, certainly when things go wrong and there's an injury here or there, Max, you might tank a season. You're the Spurs, you want to get Tim Duncan #1 in the draft and stuff like that. I get that part, okay? But Max, they tanked seasons. 18 wins, 19 wins, 10 wins, all under Sam Hinkie. He refused to spend money, wasn't willing to draft veterans or bring veterans on the roster, trying to win basketball games. It is one thing to lose, but it is one thing to be so alarmingly inept that you literally sat back and asked a city, wait, eventually we're going to get there. So in the meantime, why not just stink up the joint for years? For years. While charging them ticket prices to pay to watch that horrible product that they put forth there. There is no, who the hell can't do that job? I can quit right now and do the job that Stan Hinkie did, because you're giving me the license to throw seasons. I understand that he was very adroit with the cap and in terms of the players that you bring and save them. I get all of that because you got a capologist to help you do that and an analytics dude with the numbers. I'm not knocking him for that. I am saying to you that no matter what he did that was good, he flagrantly was willing to sacrifice even to give the impression of trying to win games in order to do it. For years is my issue. You do it for one, that's fine. But when you're tanking seasons, it can't get much worse for sports than that. And oh, by the way, it was nice to see Joel Embiid last night. He played well. You got a product like him. Look at the guards you had around him. I'm going to leave it at that.
Well, first of all, the reason they're chanting trust the process,
because he said trust the process.
Because Embiid.
Yes.
And they're excited about Embiid, the fans there, and Embiid said trust the process, and look what happened with the process with Embiid. You took him third, his draft stock
He's been out
low
for 2 years.
because he's hurt, but he may be a franchise-changing player, and they had the patience to draft him.
Would you draft somebody in basketball and wait 2 years for them to get on the court?
At number 3 overall, 3 years? You cannot pass on Joel Embiid. You couldn't pass on him. He was too good.
I'm just asking you a question.
Yep.
You're going to draft somebody. I'm going to draft somebody in 2013, knowing they ain't going to play before 2016.
Sure. As a matter of fact, I want to talk about Sam Hinkie for a second.
Go ahead.
The reason he did all those things is because he's smart. He is not the smartest guy in the room, but he is smart.
He is smart.
There are those who could have done what he did and made progress more quickly and also fielded a more competitive product, I believe.
That's what I'm saying.
That's possible. But just because you didn't hit the optimal thing you could have done doesn't mean you didn't do a good thing. Remember that 13-page letter he wrote when he resigned?
I read it start to finish.
I found that tone-deaf and self-congratulatory.
Yes.
However, there was lots of good stuff in it, and here were the two best things. You have to have a tolerance of uncertainty, and you have to be long science. You know, you don't short a stock. You're long on a stock. It means you keep it. You believe in it. He had a tolerance for uncertainty, and he was long science. He trusted the process. Now, he didn't bring it all together, not under his auspices, because the franchise got fed up with him, and they lost patience, and maybe because it's people like Stephen A. Smith, maybe Stephen A. Smith himself, who accelerated that. And maybe that's not a good thing.
I'm not going to lie to you. I begged him to get rid of him. Begged him. Begged him.
And maybe that's not a good thing.
For at least
look
a
at
year.
The Sixers. Look at the Sixers right now. Unlike a franchise like the Knicks that was actually trying to be good and stunk on ice anyway for year after year after year, or when they are good, they're just mediocre, the Sixers have an extremely bright future. Not only a ton of great draft picks going forward, cap space, flexibility, great young talent on the roster.
I'm not questioning any of that.
They got players stashed in Europe. So look, just because it didn't all come together yet, that makes him having done a terrible job?
Max, I was very, very clear in what I said. I said 19, 18, and 10 wins. Wait a minute. It's one thing to be that bad. It's another thing entirely when you're intentionally trying to be while charging the paying customer. It got so bad, Max.
That's where we disagree.
Listen, it got so bad, Max, that the commissioner got involved, had conversations, and ultimately the ownership for the Philadelphia 76ers brought Jerry Colangelo in because they said, my God, you can't ask one of the top 5 markets in the United States of America to sit idly by. Listen,
I want to address this. Wait, you brought up a lot of stuff. I want to address it.
That wasn't a lot. That's a very simple point.
That goes to the integrity of the game.
Right.
When you're taking. However, that's not the GM's fault that the rules incentivize a smart person to take.
Max,
that's why there was so much
you should
talk
be ashamed
about
of yourself.
redoing the
you
way
should
we
be ashamed.
draft.
Listen, we're not disputing.
In the NBA.
Let's be clear. Your point is clear. My point is clear. I'm saying you should be ashamed of yourself. You should be ashamed of yourself.
Wait.
Max, that's shameful.
This is the point, and you brought it up.
Max.
You brought it up. You said if you're trying to win and you stink, that's okay. Wrong. You would much rather be a team of a... Wait.
Guys, we're taking a break, but we're coming back to this. Finish your last point.
You should be ashamed of yourself.
You would
Seriously.
much rather...
You should be ashamed. Don't you ever be an executive for any of my team.
Right.
Finish your point. We're going to go to break and come back to it.
Oh, my God.
You would much rather rather be the fan of a team that's trying to tank and is no good for draft picks than
Not
a fan.
for years.
Then, can I finish the thought?
Okay.
Than a fan of a
All
team
right.
that's trying to be good and
All right,
stinks anyway.
guys, we got to go to break. There's more from this game I want to get to, though. The national anthem. We had a crazy fan.
We come
want
back.
to focus
We
on
come
the
back for
anthem.
this.
More
This is
first
ridiculous.
take
You should be ashamed
after
of
the
yourself.
break.
You
Stay
should
with
be
us.
ashamed of yourself.
Welcome to my life.